Welcome, everyone, to our brand new podcast called Getting Deep with a PhD and a JD. Hi, Kimmie. Guess what?
What?
I have a question for you. What large organization, specifically sports organization, used race-based medical practices that assumed that blacks were intellectually inferior to whites?
That's the NFL, girl.
Woo.
Got a love-hate relationship with that NFL.
I know, because NFL is just so popular. But that is what we are talking about today. We are going to talk about the NFL, and we're going to talk about their history of race norming practices, and we're going to talk about their current stance where they've stopped using race-based practices in particular race norming.
Yes. And so what we're talking about is, and this topic has been in our thoughts, in our news, relatively recent. I think the movie Concussion kind of brought this topic to the forefront,
Right.
which was back in 2015. I didn't realize it was that long ago. So essentially, the NFL reached a settlement with retired players who suffer from cognitive injuries related to concussions, dementia, and then some other neurological issues that they suffered.
I have a list of them. It's ALS, so Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, and also death with CTE. And that's, I'm not going to attempt to say it because it's a very long medical term, but that's the head injury damage
when
that
your
they
brain
found.
gets shook around.
That they found with a lot of brains.
So, that issue came to the forefront with the movie Concussion. So anyway, the NFL reached a settlement with their retired players. I think around about the initial draft of the settlement was reached in maybe 2014, and it was kind of amended ongoing, and then some of the first payouts were made in 2017.
Correct.
Well, between 2017 and 2019, what did they realize? White players were their requests for recovery were approved more often than the black
2 to 3
players.
times
2 to 3
higher
times.
than black players.
And there's 60% of all NFL retired players are black. So you see the disparity there. And the reason why is this race norming. So explain what the race norming, what that is and what that does.
So with race norming, it says, okay, where do people start normally? And so there's a baseline, but for blacks, the cognitive level is lower than whites. And so what this does, they say. So what it does is it says that in their settlement, in order to qualify for a settlement, or you had to have a certain level of impairment. So let's just say if you started at a certain point and you had a decrease in your functioning, well, they're saying that blacks automatically started lower. So when they tested blacks and they were lower, they said, oh, well, it's just because they naturally aren't as intelligent. And so with whites, they said, okay, they start here. And if they tested lower, they would say, okay,
that's an impairment.
It's an impairment. So in other words, what it did is it made it harder for blacks to qualify as impaired. And we see that because we saw that more blacks were denied, and the amount of the settlements ended up being much higher for whites than for blacks.
And what's surprising is this isn't a policy that started in the 1800s.
No.
This was a policy that started as early as recent as the 1990s.
Yeah.
And they started with, administering these culturally biased cognitive tests to begin with. So, so this is recent. This is a recent policy that was put in place by the NFL. And so, you have the first payouts starting in 2017. So then in 2019, that's when the lawsuits started. And the NFL just agreed. When I say just, I mean, what was that?
2021. Yeah.
2021. They decided to reach a settlement agreement with the Black players that had filed suit, that they will remove the race norming technique from their decision-making process. And if you're thinking, when you think about 60% of retirees are Black, that's going to cost the NFL a substantial amount, because they can no longer start, Black players with a lower cognitive baseline.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
I saw this, when you brought this topic to me, and when I first started researching it, I just couldn't believe that.
It was a shock, wasn't it? That
Yeah.
this happened right under our noses and within our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Within our lifetime, they brought this policy forward and they were using it. And it's just unbelievable. And also, one of the things that they're rescoring people now. And so 646 Black players had their results rescored. 61 qualified for new or increased settlement payments. Another 246 qualified as impaired with pre-dementia diagnosis. And so they're still rescoring folks. And so people are now, when you take away the race piece, people are qualifying. And also the other thing that the NFL did, and this really was really troublesome to me, is that they said, oh no, we never told doctors to do this. The doctors just did this on their own.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, the doctors just did this on their own. And so the doctors, when they talked to the doctors said, no, this was the process. This is what we did. And so I think that it's troubling when this was found out, and then instead of just saying, okay, listen, our bad, we did some racist practices, let's change it, to try to deflect and put the blame on someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
I think was really, really a negative thing.
And that's what fuels the real love-hate relationship with the NFL. Because, this practice is just yet another layer of racist policies within the NFL. And, this idea of race norming isn't limited to the NFL. Race norming is whether it is sort of an official policy, or what do you call it? Or a would it be considered a microaggression? You think, like, where it's not, it may not necessarily be a policy, but it's like, okay, well, when you have and I'm talking about in the medical field. So like if you have a patient, a Black patient versus a white patient, and how they're just treated differently, just in general. And you had talked about a process involving childbirth.
Yeah. So race norming is not exclusive to the NFL. Race norming occurs all the time in healthcare. And so, for example, in childbirth, they use it to figure out whether a woman who's had a cesarean section can have a vaginal birth afterwards. It's called a VBAC. So we know that cesarean births are more dangerous than vaginal births, just because it's an operation. They're just open you up, Whereas vaginal, that is the natural way that childbirth is supposed to happen.
Right.
And so being able to have a vaginal birth after a cesarean section is beneficial, because then you're not having multiple
back-to-back
surgeries, and that also can impact the what is it called, the muscles, and women have, when they have multiple C-sections, they're just some negative consequences. And so for the longest time they used race norming to determine which women could have a vaginal birth, or what they thought of as a successful vaginal birth after having a cesarean. And so the podcast that I listened to, this one researcher was really concerned about this. And what she did is she started looking at the literature and saying, why is it that part of the calculations for deciding who can have a VBAC includes race.
Mm-hmm.
When we know that race, first of all, it's not if you've listened to our other podcasts, you know that it is a social
Yes, a
construction.
social
And
construct.
so it's
Yes.
really about how people treat you. So being a Black person, it does not mean that you're intellectually inferior.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do certain things. It's the experience and how people
Mm-hmm.
treat you and how, you know, and discrimination that occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, she actually published a paper and was pretty critical of using race norming within trying to figure out who could have a vaginal birth. And
Mm-hmm.
so she was able to get it published and to really impact how women are evaluated for births. Now that doesn't mean that everybody has
Mm-hmm.
decided not to use race, but it just means that she has shown that using race is really not the best way to make a
Mm,
decision.
of course.
Yeah,
And then, mortality in childbirth is higher among Black women.
absolutely.
And if they are recommended to have C-sections more often, that contributes to that. I'm
Right.
pretty sure, in some form
And
or
multiple
fashion.
C-sections.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple
Yeah.
C-sections. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So why don't we talk about what is the call to action?
The call to action.
Mm-hmm. And go ahead.
So you know what, Kimmy? We always start by talking about education.
Mm-hmm.
We start about our call to action. In so many situations, we always start to say, get educated.
Right.
Learn about race norming.
Mm-hmm.
Think about when you go to even your doctor, because race norming still happens in healthcare. When your doctor is giving you suggested treatment, ask them how they came up with that treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was your race taken into account? In other words, did they say, okay, Black women aren't successful with this treatment, so let's do the other treatment? Are they making assumptions based on your race, or do they really have literature that says, based on studies, that to say how certain things really would benefit you or not?
Or your particular situation. Are they
Yeah,
basing it on your particular
particular
medical situation?
situation. Right.
And I think as it relates to this particular topic with the NFL, I think one of the things that you can do is to really consider and think about your support of the NFL in general. I mean, this is one layer of inequities that occur in the NFL. Their stances on certain topics and things like that. This sort of adds to that laundry list.
Yeah.
And you can support organizations that support the legal actions that these players have been able to take against the NFL in their decision to remove the race norming as a deciding, or contributing factor in making a decision on whether or not a player is entitled to their benefits. So you can probably search those organizations pretty easily. And follow the legal case as it's progressing, because there's still even though the NFL has reached a settlement to remove the race norming, the players are still having to go through the process of rescoring.
Right.
Are they rescoring fairly? At this time,
yeah. Where's the oversight?
What is the oversight? Yeah. And so there are organizations out there that support these causes and movements. You can donate to them after you've done your due diligence in researching those organizations. But I think that's a good way, an individual person can feel like, okay, especially if you're a huge sports fan. If you are a huge sports fan, be an empowered sports fan, be an educated sports fan, be a critical sports fan.
Exactly. And also, I have to mention this again. The vast majority of the current players in the NFL happen to be Black players.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of retired players out there are Black players.
Mm-hmm.
Many fans are Black fans. And when I say Black, I mean, I'm specifically talking about people who identify as Black. But we also know that there are other groups that are non-white, our Latinos, our, persons of Asian descent. I mean, there are lots of groups that are out there that are that are quote non-white. And so we have a lot of fans and lots of folks that, you know, that are multicultural that are out there. And the NFL is so huge and it's so big, they should not be doing this. They should
Mm-hmm.
not be engaging in racist practices
Yeah. Especially
because
when
the
the vast majority of the
fans, right?
players are Black.
Yes, the
And
vast majority of
mhm.
players.
And I bet
And
if you add in, like you said, other non-white players, that percentage is even higher.
yes,
You know what I
and
mean?
think about
Hmm.
how many Black coaches do we have? You
Right.
know, how many Black owners do we have? And
Hmm.
so, really, we're looking at a system where you have predominantly Black folks who are making money for this organization
Right.
and they're being judged with racist practices. So,
Hmm.
you
Or
know,
treated
or
with race.
treat it with
Hmm.
racist practices. So the thing
Hmm.
is, as sports fans, it's important. If this issue is important, if racism is important and stomping out racism is important, then let the NFL know. Let them know that
Hmm.
you're going to be watching how they handle race issues.
Hmm.
I think that's
Exactly.
important because
Absolutely.
think about it. Who knew that race norming was even happening with this?
I didn't.
I didn't know either. And we're really up to date on
Hmm.
news and current events and things and this
But
happened in
that's our
our
job.
lifetime.
Hey, our
I know.
job is to find the stuff that's not in your timeline.
Exactly.
That's,
Exactly.
people are keeping under wraps and not making a big deal out of, to find those topics and talk about them because they often have a very large impact on people.
Absolutely.
So, okay. And our final segment, our Tell Me Something
Tell me
Good.
something good. Woohoo.
Woo!
Woo.
And actually, I do think, this settlement, the decision, the fact that these players, the players who started and pursued this legal action, it's definitely brave. Anytime you are in opposition to a large institution like the NFL, it takes bravery to do that.
It takes bravery. It takes bravery.
Because
Yeah.
it can impact your family, it can impact you. These are people who are already suffering, right?
Mhm.
And now they have decided to take on this, Goliath of an organization. And so to me, that's the Tell Me Something Good, which is, what sort of triggered our conversation.
Right.
Is in fact this settlement. And we just have to keep their feet to the fire to make sure this isn't perfunctory. I think that's is that the right word? Not just, superficial, that they
Mhm.
really are rescoring. You did read off some stats that show that, yeah, some of the awards have increased and things like that. And to make sure that the awards are leveled,
Right.
based on the actual injury that they have suffered.
And I want to go back to I believe 2015 when the movie Concussion came out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that although we didn't know everything when this movie came out, I
Yeah.
still think that was a really important movie to come out. And
Mm-hmm.
so Tell Me Something Good, the movie was out. If you all get a chance, please take a look at the movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because there are lots of things that the general public is not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to understand how these things happened and how do we find out about CTE,
Mm-hmm.
which is the illness with the brain, and
Mm-hmm.
and even some of the players today who have been in trouble for doing some pretty horrific things.
Mm-hmm.
They've said that CTE
Mm-hmm.
they've either confirmed it or they've either strongly suspected CTE.
Because isn't CTE something, and the medicine could have advanced since I learned about this, but isn't CTE like you can't really diagnose it until after the person dies?
Because I think what they're doing is they're examining the brain. I think up until that point, they're like a lot of brain issues. I think they're looking at behaviors, and
Mm-hmm.
they can look at like cognitive stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
then when a person dies, you can actually see if they do
The
an
effect on
autopsy,
the
and
brain.
you can actually see the effects
Mm-hmm.
on the brain. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also there was a statistic. There was something. one of the reasons, like the actual study that they did, and let me see if I can find this number because I thought this was pretty amazing that they looked at, I believe it was 110 brains from
Oh.
players,
Mm-hmm.
deceased players, and they found that of those brains, 100, I believe 100 had
You looked at 100. I think they looked at 111,
11,
and it
yes,
determined that 110.
10 had
Mm-hmm.
CTE. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, it's so CTE, I mean, they're really, and they still need to do more research on it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a game, like it doesn't take a rocket scientist
To know
to
that,
know that there's damage going on
yeah, yeah. And the thing is that
or occurring.
it's people love the game, and players will tell you they love to
Yeah,
play.
they
You know,
do.
they love to
Mm-hmm.
play. Um, and so if people are going to engage in these behaviors, and if someone is getting rich, because the NFL is getting
Right.
rich off of this, then you need to take care of your players.
Yeah, they need to get rich too.
Yes, and then
The
you need
level
to make sure,
the level
absolutely,
of rich needs to match
it needs to, yeah,
because
yeah,
they're doing the actual work. I
right.
mean, let's not get it twisted. If they weren't doing what they were doing, there wouldn't be any.
Then there would not be the NFL would not have as much money, and they would not
Mm-hmm.
be as embedded into
Mm-hmm.
American culture as they are.
Yeah, because when you look at fans, they connect with players. They
Yes.
really connect with players. They love the game and they love their teams, of course, but they also connect with the players. And so the players have a great deal of power that I think
Mm-hmm.
they could wield a little bit better and in a more organized fashion.
Yes. Absolutely.
And the fans too. The
And the
fans too.
fans too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, this has
All
been a good
right.
one.
This has
Look,
been a
we're at
great discussion.
24 minutes.
Yeah. Woohoo.
This was a very interesting discussion. I enjoyed it. We hope you all enjoyed it as well. And as usual, I mean, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Like
Mm-hmm.
and subscribe.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
And also let us know if you have topics that
oh,
you are interested
yeah, we're
in us
open.
discussing. We are totally open. We want to know what you all want to hear about. You
Let
know?
us know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
All right,
right.
Nikki. Well, it's been real.
It has been. So until
Until
next
next time.
time,
Yep.
bye.
Bye.